Hello, it's Carrie Lee and welcome back to LFP Farm Life. Today we're going to do something that's rather fun and a rather unconventional canning project that most people don't think of canning, and that is lemon curd. I've got most of everything set up and ready to go. I've already got our eggs and egg yolks cracked and whisked are ready to go in our bowl. I have already put our sugar and our lemon zest into my Vitamix rather than a regular granulated sugar. And this particular recipe recommends a superfine sugar so that you end up with a really nice smooth sugar. And if you put your zest in with your sugar, you get a super aromatic, lovely sugar. And if you use the really light colored sugar, mine's a little bit off-white, almost a tan color, you get the most beautiful yellow sugar. It's so pretty and it smells absolutely delicious. I have already juiced all of our lemons that we're going to need, and I'm making a larger batch. I've doubled this particular batch, so I've got all of our lemons juiced. There's a couple of ways that you can do this. I have used my Cuisinart juicer to do this, and because we had a fair number of lemons that we needed to juice, it really makes it a really quick and easy way to do that. And whenever you do it, you end up with an absolutely completely juiced citrus fruit that's super fast. Or you can just use a citrus reamer, or you could use one of those little squeezy jobs. I will go ahead and link some of these items in my store so that if you don't have them, these tools are absolutely great. And then in order to do your zesting, there's a couple of ways you can do that. You could either use a microplane zester, which is what I use, and you just run your peel on the outside. You could use a peeler and just get the zest and not the white pith. And if you put it in a blender or a food processor with your sugar, that will get it nice and fine. The whole gig is to get everything as blended and fine as you can. Or you can use a box grater if you've got that and you don't have anything else. That will work just as fine too. And then the last thing we're going to need is our butter, all diced up. And because we're going to be canning this, temperatures are going to be a little bit more important with our food product before we put it in the canning. So we're going to need either an instant read or a candy thermometer. I don't know what happened to my instant read thermometer. It must have walked off, grew some feet, and twaddled on off, but I can't find it at the moment. So I just grabbed my candy thermometer. And I don't have a regular double boiler, so I've just got a regular stock pot on my stove. And because we're going to be canning, this will normally make most people will put this in a half-pint canning jar. I go through lemon curd like crazy because it's great on toast. You can use it on cheesecakes, you can use it in muffins, you can use it in pancakes and crepes, in all sorts of things. So I do mine in pints, so I go through it fairly quickly. So I'm going to be using fewer jars, so I'm just going to use a tall stock pot as my water bath canner. So let me get this all set up, and then we can go ahead and assemble our lemon curd because it's so easy to actually make any sort of curd. Our first step in making lemon curd, off the heat, we would like to combine our eggs and yolk and our sugar and zest together. So I'm just going to pop that out of my Vitamix food processor. Oh my gosh, does this smell heavenly. And we're just going to give this a good whisk up. Get everything really well combined. And now that we have the sugar all combined with our egg yolks and our eggs, now we can go ahead and add our lemon juice. And I like to whisk a little bit in at a time. I find that it's just less messy because our eggs and sugar is just so thick. It just makes it easier blending in the lemon juice without making such a mess. Boy, does this smell nice and fresh. I just love the smell of lemon curd. Actually, any kind of curd always smells just divine for me. It just brightens everything up that you're making in a meal, and it just cuts the sweetness of anything that you're doing. Even though it itself is quite sweet, but the amount of sharp lemon that you've got, it just seems to balance everything so well. So we're going to go ahead and put this on our double boiler, and then you just want to keep whisking until this starts to thicken up. And a lot of people will go ahead and add their butter at the same time that they are cooking their lemon curd. I tend to like to add my butter at the last bit because I think it just gives me a little bit more of a silkier, nicer finish to my lemon curd. And I will put a link to this recipe in the description box below. And you just want to make sure that you have enough water in your double boiler that it will continue to boil the amount of time that it is going to take for this lemon curd to thicken up. And you're going to want to bring this lemon curd up to 180 degrees. And another thing that's unique about lemon curd is we're going to be hot packing this lemon curd, but normally in canning we do hot into hot, but we're going to use hot tap water that's filled with hot tap water in my water bath can. I'm not going to turn it on and bring it to a boil before I put my canning jars in, because we're going to want our lemon curd to come to the boil in our canning jar. We're going to use that little bit of extra time to pre-can. Let's call it a little bit of pre-canning. That's one of the extra steps to make this a home safe canning recipe. And that's one of the little bit of unusual things that we do to make this lemon curd a safe home canning option. And you definitely do not want to scramble the egg yolk and eggs in here. So you want to keep this moving at all times. You can either whisk it, you can use a rubber spatula. It's whatever you want to do. I'm not liking the amount of foam that I'm getting here. So I am going to switch to a spatula because I'm putting a touch too much air in there. I'm just going to turn that down. I might have to skim this foam off because I am not liking this foam at all. Also, with your lemon curd, it doesn't have quite as long of a shelf life as some of your other canned items. It's normally not something we have to worry about here, but you want to figure that generally it's going to be shelf stable for approximately I'm going to have to double check this, but I want to say it said 3 to 6 months, but double check the link that I am going to supply. But I think it said 3 to 6. It never lasts quite that long here. And you just want to get the foam off. But while you're doing that, you want to be mindful that you're still keeping that bottom moving so that you don't have any sort of clump. Otherwise, you will need to strain your lemon curd. And we can see that it's starting to get thick on the sides, so it won't take long now. And it needs to get up to at least 180 degrees, but even more importantly, it needs to be thick before we put it in those jars. And it needs to coat the back of our spoon If you're making lemon curd traditionally and you're having issues with the curd becoming thick, there's a couple of ways that you can fix the problem. You could go ahead and add an additional yolk or two and just temper that in. That will usually do it. Or if you're out of egg yolks, you could just do a little bit of a cornstarch slurry and add a little bit at a time. Just be aware with the cornstarch, it can get a little bit of that cornstarch taste. Go ahead and get this melted in here because she is starting to get pretty thick. As this cools down, the butter will also help solidify this in your jars as well. Because our curd has started to get a bit stiff on the edges, that is also letting us know that we have a good ratio of yolk to lemon in our recipe, so we should have no problems with the finished consistency. Oh, you can really see the richness now. Let's quick check our temperature. Okay, we just cleared that 170, so we're good, and we're quickly approaching that 180, so we are definitely good. Okay, now we can go ahead and set this up to get it in the jars. Okay, we're ready to have our lemon curd go into the jars. Our lemon curd is at 180 degrees. I just lit my stove to start warming up the water, so by the time that we get these couple of jars filled, that water is going to be nowhere near warm, so we don't need to worry about that. And we're going to fill these jars at 1/2 inch of headspace. So let's get to filling. And I'm just going to quick give it one stir just to make sure that everything is well combined. And oh wow, you can already see how much it is beginning to thicken. This is going to be lovely when it's finished. And if this one ends up being short, then I am just going to put it directly in the fridge, because this will keep up to 3 weeks right in your fridge without being canned. And there's a poppy seed and lemon cake that I would really like to make that requires a 1/2 cup of lemon curd, which I think I might have leftovers. So this definitely will not go to waste. So we didn't quite get the 4 pints that I was hoping for, but I definitely did get enough to get that poppy seed cake that I want. And as always, we are going to use boiling water to touch up our rims, just to make sure there's nothing on these rims that will prevent them from sealing. And I am using my Denali lids today, and I have absolutely loved how these lids are performing. But you know what? It would have been good if I would have gotten some rings to go with them. And look at the color of this already. And after I put this in the fridge and let it cool, I'll show you the texture and the thickness of it. We're gonna go ahead and pop this in the canner, and we are gonna can this for 15 minutes after it boils. So once your water bath canner reaches that boiling point, then you start your timer for the 15 minutes. So you don't include the amount of time that it takes that water to boil. Gosh, aren't these jars just so pretty? And once they're out of the canner, I'll show you what they look like all canned up. And I'll show you what this one looks like all cooled down and at its proper consistency.